building a startup is hard.
Oh my God.
As in, it's one of the hardest things somebody could ever embark on. I actually even think that startup founders should be celebrated like military guys. Because they literally go to war. If they survive it, it's like they need to be celebrated.
And also, look, we're giving 20-something and 30-something year olds 100 million bob. You're in a consumerism culture. Every video you're watching is buy me, take me to the day, and then.
Yeah.
We've already just been talking about here with the ladies who you can't see who are over here. How difficult it is for a young man to try and pay those debts. Then you're giving him $1 million bob and you're telling him, behave. He's never gone for a financial and investment class. He's not like a multi-master's Strathmore graduate. There's a humility that failure gives you and a clarity of purpose. There's a superhumanness you lose. And you realize I cannot do this thing by myself. I cannot do this thing without others. And I don't know everything. If you don't have that attitude, you're not getting any of my money.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of the My Tech Story Africa podcast. My name is Alice Kanjejo, your lovely host, and today I am joined by two special guests that will give the opportunity to introduce themselves in a few. But this segment is inspired by our new newsletter that has been rolling out in the past month or so. We officially started rolling out our MTS newsletters weekly and monthly, and this is the May Roundup. Now, in the May Roundup, we just talk about the things that have been happening that we feel we need to shed light on the past month or so. And that's why I have these two lovely gentlemen right next to me. And now is the time. Introduce yourselves, guys.
Yeah.
Go, Dom.
All right.
For sure.
Well, as you've heard, I'm Dom. But anyway, my name is Dominic. I'm Dominic Mulinda. I currently serve as the head of product of a startup called Honeycoin. And I've been in the space for quite some time now. I'm counting almost a decade. This year.
Almost a decade.
Yeah, in different capacities, like learning as a student, and then now building my own stuff.
So we're taking students' time. Okay.
Yeah, we have to count student time. We have to count student time. But really, I'm excited and I'm honored to be here. Really looking forward to the discussions we're gonna have.
Nice.
I think it's gonna be good. I'm hoping to learn a lot, and just have a buffet of different perspectives on what's happening in something that we all really, really dearly love, and which is tech, and the
little in-betweens. Yeah.
Okay, that's such a high bar for an introduction, bro. I'm like, my name is Tonee Ndungu. I have been in tech 20 years.
We're doing student time. Student time.
Minus student time.
Okay.
Currently the CEO of Tribbe, new company, came out off the gate maybe 2 years or something like that. We've been working on it, still in stealth, closed the round, which is nice. Won't talk to you about that, but we did. But before that, I was CEO of Kitabu, which is an IT company, ran that for 12 years. Before that, started the Lab, which I did for 4.5 years. So I'm tech OG, been around for a while.
Yeah.
Seen companies start, grow, fail, get sold, mostly get auctioned, and go public. So you've seen, been around I've seen all those journeys. So it's a good story. So I'm looking forward to being able to have a roundtable conversation about those things.
Yes.
I can't wait.
I think I picked the right team. We were already having conversations. We've taken about 1.5 to 2 hours. Having our own podcast, just having casual conversations. And we said, okay, I think we need the camera on now
so
to have this discussion started.
We should have led with recording that instead. But anyway, it's going to be fun still.
It's still going to be good, man. I have faith in that. Guys, before we get into the deep dive of the conversation, maybe we can just start by telling us about your weeks or your month. How is your personal roundup?
It's finished, man. The month is over. Why am I talking about it?
Then tell us about the roundup.
May is done.
You don't look back.
It's gone. Throw that. Can we curse on this thing?
Yeah, you can do what you want to do.
Okay, cool. Throw that shit out the window. It's June now. Let's get into June, man. It's halfway through the year.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I've been good. I think I'm more interested in, Trump's conviction. I find that quite interesting.
34 counts, bro.
I mean,
Are we surprised?
I literally came to this realization that, every republic is just a banana republic.
All of them.
And it's quite fun. It's quite fun.
It's all
every single one is.
But
is just a scheme.
we pray for them, man. I hope they figure
Maybe
themselves out.
Maybe you can give a bit more context on the Trump conviction.
Well, I think he was convicted for felony. in New York by a jury. And I think the biggest implication about that conviction is that he's still going to be vying, and I think he's the front runner to be the president. And I don't know what it's going to look like heading up to November 6th in the US.
I don't think anyone knows what it's going to be.
Yeah, I think it's a precarious situation for the states
Yeah.
specifically,
Yeah.
because I don't know if there's any front runner candidate who's been in that situation, like
Ever.
going into like an election cycle. So
He's
that's
the
going to
first
be very
president.
interesting.
Full stop.
Yeah,
go
but
through
then the weird takes that I have on that is probably like people are interesting. People are very different.
Yeah.
And I'm really looking forward to see how people rally behind him or either hate him completely.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a very interesting thing to watch and
Yeah.
observe.
Yeah.
And you know what? Like,
See how it goes?
yeah, let's just see how it goes. But I found that quite interesting this week.
Because I wanted to bring in a story about that I was hearing today at the All In podcast. You guys should tune in if you're interested in such kind of conversations. But they were having a discussion about COVID-19 and recent developments, and this guy who was basically
Fauci.
So I was trying to find the name of this guy. I think it was Felix or something.
Fauci.
Yes.
Anthony Fauci.
Anthony Fauci.
Of course, I'm with the right people.
Yes.
Yes.
I mean,
so
Tonee's here.
I mean,
I can't watch that.
it seems like the allegations of the vaccine being a lab leak are coming to light, and this guy who was
they're more
the
founded.
savior and everything that people were referring to give us the information, turns out he was in fact part of the team that was kind of pushing for, didn't push for.
Can I
per
ask
se,
a
but
question?
implemented.
Can I ask you a real question? Are you surprised? Are you surprised?
It's not a surprising
No,
fact.
it's
Come
not.
on, man.
It's not.
Come on.
It
How is
actually
it not
is.
surprising to you
So
guys?
if you think about, and let me come up with 3 situations I just want you to think about them in your mind. Why do we have consistent famine and drought? Consistent. We know it's coming. Why do we have consistent famine and drought? Why do we have wars? Like just we go and destroy a ton of things with arsenals of explosive weapons and gas and whatever. Why do we have wars? And then why do we have endemic diseases? And then go to the stock exchange and look at the companies at the top and correlate those companies and their shareholders to those 3 activities. And you will find that it is people in food, it is people in munitions, and it's in people in pharmaceuticals that are at the top of the list. It is so profitable to kill and destroy because you will still be called in to come and fix it. So it doesn't surprise me that if we were to assume 65% of the planet was vaccinated, how many billions of people are those? If you got a cent per person and those drugs weren't cheap.
And we didn't even do enough testing for the vaccines.
Because that vaccine was coughed out in months.
Yeah.
But then again, all of us were locked into the house. If I
Yeah.
was sitting at a situation like that, you want to tell me I wouldn't find a way to make some money from it?
I mean, I can't even get into the.
Would you?
I mean,
I want to act like I would.
To be the same.
I want to act like
You
I'd
were
be
the
good.
guy.
yeah.
But
Anyway, I really would like to reserve my COVID-19 comments, to be honest, just because I mean, a lot of what happened at that period of time, I found it to be very unfounded. There was very little grounding. There was very, like governments were running
scared.
amok. Like we're just passing everything, vetoing everything. I'm more of a, and this will probably come out a lot more in my perspective on so many things, but I like to think of myself a little bit of a libertarian leaning type of mind on an economic perspective. Not really to the extreme right, but more free markets, less governments, less interventions by governments. I even think that governments could be way more efficient with really less dockets. But let's not get cancelled in the first 20 minutes of our episode. And COVID-19 was a really strong period of time that those convictions of mine were bolstered, to be honest. And so I really wasn't shocked.
But how? That sounds like cognitive dissonance to me.
How?
Because you're saying...
I can explain.
You're saying we should have less government, right?
Yes.
Cool.
Correct.
COVID-19 was probably the least government we ever had.
No.
And the largest pharmaceutical we ever had.
Actually.
So free markets run COVID.
I actually beg to disagree.
Tell me about that.
You see,
You've just started a political podcast.
no, okay.
We're wrapping up in 3 minutes.
let him
So
do his
say your
thing,
points.
yes.
Go.
The two things that I consider to be the biggest oppositions to free markets.
Right.
Cronyism, one, and socialism. So cronyism is what I'd like to say modern day controlled monopoly.
Russia.
Very few companies get a hold of a particular sector and literally lobby their way to cordon off like a particular sector and be able to pass. I mean, government at that particular point in time is just a tool for them. So,
But you know what that's called in finance, right? Mergers and acquisitions.
well,
You do realize...
actually, M&As are like very interesting.
But in the US...
I have very one of the I'm really genuinely very confused about M&As in two parts because I really don't completely think M&As are monopolies. And let me explain why.
Bro.
No. Let me explain why. Let me explain why. I think M&As. I think M&As easily lead, like a lot of mergers and acquisitions have to be checked, of course, for monopoly in the sense where you bar people from getting into a particular industry. But I really don't think, and this is now now this is on the other side sitting as a founder.
Right.
I kind of like this school of thought where if you are the best at what you do and you provide the service that you provide like the best in the market, you deserve the largest market share. I really don't disagree on a monopoly that's a monopoly because of just really good service delivery or really good product
And I actually want to say to that point, I agree with you on that point.
Yeah, but when it crosses the line and the gray area where it begins to cross the line is where I begin to block other people from participating. And I like to use this analogy. I think we've talked about it before with some of the guys we work with. I like to say, imagine we have a lake, right? And we all fish from a particular lake.
Right.
But then you discover that, hey, there's a section in this lake that's really warm.
Right.
And a lot of planktons grow there.
Right.
And so you discover that every time you go and fish from that specific section in the lake, you're always getting a larger haul than everyone else.
Right.
Now, it's free market if I can come and have the ability to literally make that discovery myself and also start fishing from there. But it begins to cross that free market area where you begin cordoning the section.
So let's actually speak to that, because I think one of the things you have seen, to your point earlier, again, which is why I'm going to go back to the cognitive dissonance, where you're saying one thing and then you're saying something else that contradicts. Let me explain. And this is the beauty of free markets. The free market value is that the most powerful, the most efficient, the most successful business
rises to the top,
right?
Ideally,
right?
Theoretically,
yes.
Hypothetically.
Yeah. When you look around at those businesses that rise to the top, when you rise to the top, your new goal isn't to rise to the top.
Yes.
Your new goal is to stay at the top.
Stay at the top.
So how do you stay at the top? You look down at other people who are doing things similar to you or doing things and growing at the same pace you did, and you buy them in. And then you're like, I will help you rise to the top. And then you find another company, I will help you rise to the top. And another company, I will help you rise to the top. And so what happens is Facebook buys Meta. Facebook buys Instagram, buys WhatsApp, buys this, buys that, and then calls itself Meta. Google buys this, buys that, and then calls itself Alphabet. Microsoft, which still calls itself Microsoft, puts money behind OpenAI, $10 billion, and starts pushing it out. Then what you start seeing is there's no more rising to the top. It's not the best companies that rise to the top. It's the ones that are best funded that rise to the top.
Agreed.
And why do they rise to the top?
I agree.
Why do they rise to the top?
Conversation.
Now back to technology. Actually, now we're funneling it back to technology.
Actually, yes.
This last week, NVIDIA became more valuable than both Tesla and Amazon combined.
Yeah.
$2.7 trillion.
Crazy, disgusting money.
4 years ago, people didn't put money behind NVIDIA. Why? Because NVIDIA was only known for its gaming.
Yeah.
And all it would do was provide graphic cards for GPUs for companies. And then OpenAI was like,
there's something here.
Now these companies are fighting for a chip worth $440,000 per chip. Per chip. There are governments that cannot afford that chip. Companies are fighting for that chip from now the most valuable company on the planet because the next thing is AI. My point is, a lot of the time, to your point now, what I'm saying about this cognitive dissonance, it's not about the best in the game. It's about the one that has most access to finance, one. And two, when you have access to Amazon capital, you own 186 companies, because that's how many companies Amazon, I believe, owns. 168, 186, something like that. And there's mind maps showing you, this is what Amazon owns. This is what P&G or Procter & Gamble owns. Because I think they own they own the entire food chain in the US.
Exactly.
Is them, right?
Yeah.
Then you go to Coca-Cola. This is what they own.
They all group.
They all group. They own
companies.
it. So manufacturing falls in the same spot. So whether you're doing food, you're doing education, you're doing manufacturing, you're doing tech, they're giants in that space. And what I was trying to say is we've free market, unbridled free market.
Yeah, unbridled free market is impractical.
And
that's
is
why I
where
say
we
it's
are.
a spectrum.
So whenever we say government, whenever we say
Are we
government,
though? Are we-
whenever we say government,
Okay.
let's always add a pinch of salt. And whenever we say free
Free
market,
market,
let's also add a
Another
pinch of
pinch of
salt.
I agree. There's
Because none of
definitely
those are
room
saviors.
for a lot of nuance,
Nuance.
a lot of nuance between
Yes,
the spectrum,
that's
and
for
that's why I said it's a spectrum.
Yeah.
I'm not really at the extreme end,
Right.
but I lean towards that philosophy
market.
more than a more controlled, more government-centered, more socialist approach, basically. But anyway,
That, I do agree with
moving
that.
on.
Actually, speaking of what we were talking on, moving it towards the tech direction and in terms of funding, there's a tweet here that went round about Kenya's agritech iProcure raising $10.2 million to grow its input supply network.
I'm hoping you didn't
and
talk
then
about
exactly, and then a follow-up, it actually went into receivership, which seems to be a trend sometimes when we look at tech news right now. Another article by Citizen shows that Copia, another company, to cut 1,060 jobs and warns of shutdown just months after 2.6 billion Kenyan shillings worth of funding.
around $20 million.
Exactly. So
$103 million.
$103 million.
$103 million.
I said it
Their total
was
funding is $103 billion.
103.
Look, I think there's
Wait,
a
103 billion.
2.6 billion.
$103 million.
yes,
is the total
million
funding.
dollars,
That was probably the last round.
Yeah. Now, what do we, I mean, why do you think we have so many cases, or rather,
First
from
of
what
all-
we've seen, do we have many cases of startups that are failing,
Yes.
especially in Africa,
Yes.
after receiving funding?
Not even in Africa. Generally, startups fail.
Okay.
But there's two
Talk
things I
about
want
it.
to say about this. And I want to be very quick because I want to hear what you have to say, Dom, as a young man in tech.
Okay.
Compared to me, at least. One, money isn't success.
This guy.
Stop with going on LinkedIn and saying we have raised X million dollars. What you're trying to tell people is you have won. No, you've just gotten debt.
Started.
You've just borrowed. Why would I buy a car on loan and then go show it off? Because that's what I've done.
Because sometimes people argue that it attracts maybe more people to now become interested.
Then
for
let
their
me
own
send the
individual
money
gains.
to that. Let me send that TechCrunch story or that
Exactly.
C note or whatever to the people that I want to have attention. Let me create a newsletter and then send it to other funders. Let me tell my funder to get other funders and
newsletter.
put money inside that. Get their newsletter. It's dope. It's on point. Sick.
MTS
Yo, get
Africa,
out there,
post / join.
The thing that's the first one. And then the second one is, why is failure so bad?
This guy. He took my notes.
I'm on the money right now, yeah?
You took my notes, bro.
You guys need to just
He
give
took
me
my notes, bro. He took-
Listen to
But
me,
I
yo.
like that. I like that. Because I'm just gonna
Because we could get a room and just discuss your shared points, man.
point by point.
I'll be like, discuss it.
Because
Because
talk about it.
that's the other thing.
But
So
yeah, I agree.
Market Force didn't do well. It was one of the companies that had to lay off its people, shut down.
Yeah.
Tesh Mbabu is out here with a new company called Chapter. And I think the bravest thing that Tesh has done is to recognize, appreciate, and own what Market Force did and didn't do. I think of companies like Kune Foods, which got $1 million and then kind of
I was a regular customer right there.
yeah, exactly, right? It failed. Okay, so we had stories on the grapevine as to why it failed. Money was being misspent, whatever. It would have been such value if the CEO, founder of the company sat down and said on a podcast, this is the situation. This is what happened. This is what we got right. This is what we got wrong. Look, we're giving 20-something and 30-something year olds 100 million bob. You're in a consumerism culture. Every video you're watching is buy me, take me to the day, and then.
Yeah.
We've already just been talking about here with the ladies who you can't see who are over here. How difficult it is for a young man to try and pay those debts. Then you're giving him $1 million bob, and and you're telling him, behave. He's never gone for a financial and investment class. He's not like a multi-master's Strathmore graduate.
Yeah.
He's
Most
been
times they don't even have the
bootstrapping.
degree.
He's been bootstrapping, probably he's borrowed money from his mom, his friends, everyone.
Yeah.
Then he has got these people who have come, Stanford level types. They have given a stack of money. They're like, your business is good, your DD is all right. Go make us 10x.
Exactly.
10x. Think about that.
Actually, I'm usually very fearful. Okay, if I was to get to a place where I'm getting investor funding, it's almost like you're celebrating, but it's a fear.
It's like
I've
it's
just
like walking
got
towards the
$10
guillotine,
million.
and you're celebrating.
Exactly.
People
I mean,
destroy you.
it's you literally just have more juice for war. And I like how Tonee has framed it, because that was exactly my thought process when it came to that. Because, I mean, I was thinking about how much the noise to signal ratio is just blown out of proportion.
Say that slowly, bro.
Yeah,
Say it
like
slow.
the noise to signal ratio is really blown out of proportion, because it makes good headlines, to be honest, to report, oh wow, imagine these guys raised $40 million and failed. Bruh, like, it gets to a point when you raise money that, and I think one of the biggest, at least sitting from this side, as a company that's raised, right, and is learning how to steward, like venture. I read recently a book by this guy called Morgan Housel. It's called The Psychology of Money. And it's really such a shame how austerity measures are not like plugged into young founders at a really, like, you know, like in the nascent like years of your startup growth.
Yes.
Because how we think about money is absolutely jaundiced. When you find so many guys rushing to announce that they've raised X amount of money and are speaking in the next 50 conferences but not focusing on their products and not focusing on their users and not focusing on their customers. Like it's usually like it's like you still need to do everything. You still need to sell, but you still need to build, and you still need to build effectively for the right people. So I've never found anything worth bragging about when it comes to funding, to be honest. It's just an indicator of interest, but it doesn't mark how good or how bad really a product is. And that's to go into explaining, dude, like building a startup is hard.
Oh my God.
As in, it's one of the hardest things somebody could ever embark on. I actually even think that startup founders should be celebrated like military guys, because they literally go to war. If they survive it, it's like they need to be celebrated.
And also, let me just add to that.
It's so
and say,
hard.
not only is it hard, a lot of people need to also do some math and do some numbers and just look at the statistics.
Yeah.
The startup founders who succeed are in their 40s. Very few are in their 20s and 30s.
Yeah.
And it's not to say that 20s and 30s are bad years.
What statistics?
I can give you thousands of.
The
best one I ever got was
true.
A16Z and Startup 500. And they said their third round founders are the ones that had much more success than their first round founders with more money.
Valid.
So what's the point? I think there's a thing that we lack, and it's not to disingenuize or disengage or disenfranchise younger founders, but there's something that you cannot rush, and that's experience. Yeah. You can't rush it.
Time. You really can't rush it.
You can't rush it. And the thing about experience that I really want to get people to understand is it doesn't mean that just because you're in your 20s, you can't build something sustainable. Of course you can. I mean, nobody's saying you can't. You could do it, and you probably have more energy, more this, more that, more this. But there's two kinds of experience that you need to be able to build a good company. First, you need external experience. Just how to talk to founders, how to talk to customers, how to sell, how to encourage your company when things are up and when things are down. Like, don't get too excited,
to lead well.
but don't get too sad. Right?
Yeah.
There's a cadence you need to create for yourself, which is external for your company, for your investors, for your people. There's a thing you need to do on the outside. This also includes financials, management, delayed gratification. That's external. But the thing we don't talk about is the internal, the mental health, the emotional health, the physical health, the toll it takes on you, because as a founder and as a co-founder and as staff, you're going to be working, we call it on the cliff.
Yeah.
You just don't know where the cliff is at.
Yeah,
it's like, it's dark.
Staring at the barrel of the shotgun.
Literally
every time.
And you keep that barrel there because you know if you move it,
it's a
you fail.
disaster. And that's tied into my next question. Do you think now, you see, once you get funding, and especially as you've said, as startups, there's a lot of pressure for you to grow. Do you think that pressure then, the pressure to grow too quickly, rather, do you think that has an impact on making unsustainable decisions that eventually did lead to the shutdowns? Or do you think that they're
So back to that question of internal. If you give him $100 million and you give me $100 million, we will do very different things with that money. If you give us the same assignment and you give him 100 million and you give me 100 million, this is my assumption, Dom. I'm going to make an assumption based on your age, not on your intellect, just on your age.
Go for it.
If I give you 100, if she gives us $100 million, you're going to spend much more time doing, because he's strong, he's agile, he's young, he's a goer, he's going to spend much more time doing and much less time thinking. I am going to spend much more time thinking than time doing, because you see, my risk metrics are a little different. I've got two daughters. My parents are getting older. I probably will not have this shot again in my life. He's not thinking that way. He doesn't have kids. He doesn't have folks who are getting older. He doesn't think he's going to live for the next 2 years. Like, there's a way in which you're living your life that allows you to take...
Our risk palette is
very
completely
different.
And that's true.
And there's nothing I can do about it.
And edge. It's literally an edge thing. I get that, actually. And weirdly enough, I agree with it in the context where I think very different people will approach it, will pretty much approach how they pursue a venture very differently. But I think I even want to lean more on the side where I'm still going to take it back to that idea of austerity. Like, maybe 100 million isn't good. Maybe 1 million is what's good for me at this point.
Right.
You see, like, it's the lack of it that breeds the creativity to actually innovate my way out of the
Let me tell you
constraint.
something.
Like,
that's the point. That's a fire point.
And you see, and we've seen this. We see this personally ourselves, even right now with what we're doing. Like, there's such a huge drive to want to raise more. Why? Because you can. Because your books look so good at this particular point in time.
Nice.
And I mean, like, you have the perfect story.
Right.
But that $10 million could kill you right now.
Chances are
because like, there are certain processes that are not in place.
Yeah.
You're still too young. That certain processes internally are mission critical. And you need time. Like, those are things that can be refined by time. I can give an example. How you hire the people you choose to work with. Startups literally rise and fall because of the first 20, 50 people they hire.
50 is a lot.
50 is even a lot.
Yeah.
But the 50 is like maybe even Silicon Valley. In Africa, we're talking 20.
Yes.
The first 20 people are the guys you're with in the trenches.
Yes.
And if you're bringing in the wrong people at that point in time, and you need to give yourself time
to get the one wrong person.
You need to give yourself time to find a right fit, to find a right team, to learn to work through the dynamics,
100%.
especially for young guys. So
I dare say, I even dare say that one of the mission critical, to your point of mission critical, I think the biggest problem in companies is the founders, then the staff. The culture is created by the founders.
That's true.
Right?
That's
if you have a founder who's cocky because he raised money and doesn't know how to sit under a mentor, he's basically told everybody in his team, be cocky. Because we are young, we are fantastic, we're supernatural, we can do anything. Terrible mistake. Wow. Then if you have a founder who can't hold himself accountable or hold herself accountable for a mistake, instead hides or talks over it or bullshits the way around it, you've told the whole team, this is how we do things. When you find a mistake, don't report it.
Sweep it under the rug.
Sweep it under the rug. Like, if you find a founder, because culture,
trickles
a fish rots from the head first.
That's
so
true.
I think a lot of these things start from the top. But the problem is, and it's like, again, back to NVIDIA CEO, he said, there's such value in trials and hardship.
Yeah.
Because when you go through hardship and you turn to your peer, you realize this person has no idea what I'm going through because we're in the same boat. Yeah. Can I look up and ask somebody who went through it? Yeah. Somebody told me a while back, a lot of the things you think are going to destroy you, you look back at them in a couple of years and think, how did you ever think I now, in hindsight, can tell him that.
Yeah.
When he comes and tells me,
I don't have hindsight benefit.
I'm dying. I'm like, in 5 years, you're going to come and sit down and have this conversation. You'll be like, what was happening?
Yeah.
And I am the future you talking to you now, telling you, just take it one day at a time.
Yeah.
5 years is just one day,
One day
at
at
a
a
time.
time.
Yeah.
Come on.
And so those are the kind of conversations when we're starting to build businesses and we're being founders. Like I'm so much more confident in my founder journey now than I was when I was 30.
When you're 30.
Because $5.5 million at 30 I was in the papers. It's astronomical.
Yeah.
But now if I was to raise that kind of capital,
It's
I wouldn't tell a soul.
Mm-hmm.
Except if you're not in the company, you
that's
wouldn't know. Because everybody needs to understand this is $5.5 million worth of pressure.
What of pressure?
That
What's
we
the
need to-
delivery
That's
expected?
delivery
What's the
expectation.
returns?
And it's not going to be 5.5 in return. There's an X.
Oh,
And it could be a 5 or a 10X.
could be returning
So-
someone's fund.
Exactly, because
You could be the one
could
startup
be the
that's
one startup that's
expected
survived.
to
That's
return the
1 in 10,
fund.
right? So
Just
that's
take this
the
back,
reality.
Kidogo.
Okay, yeah,
Are we done with
I was no, I was gonna bring in the next conversation
Right.
actually, but this was actually really interesting. I think if you're a young founder, I think that is very critical for them to listen to and know that just because you got the funding, it doesn't mean their journey ends. In fact, if anything, that is where the journey begins. So
can I just one?
yes, go ahead.
I mean, they're like, how many possible exits are there out of a startup when you think about it? You either fail, you either get acquired, maybe you go public. And I mean, you can still run this business for like however long you want to do, or maybe have like an executive come and take it over. And this thing now transcends, it literally transcends you.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just one of the 3 outcomes that's expected, that's
Right,
happened.
right.
It really isn't anything to like really go wild over.
Yeah.
I mean, guys have WeWork raised billions of dollars and still fail.
Yeah.
Like people fail.
You can't predict
People
some
fail.
of these
And
things, you
and
know.
actually, I'd actually go ahead as to say, I love this happening in the African ecosystem because it shows that it's vibrant. Like there are things happening, and out of all those, 20 failures, one company will stand tall.
Yeah.
That really require that funding and is going to deliver that value that is needed.
Right.
Which is what you had shared with me is the expectation for VC fundings in the first place.
Yeah, but it's literally practical math for VCs. They don't expect
All of
out
them
of 100
succeed.
companies,
Yeah.
more than even 90 to return.
I think we're the ones who are blowing, as you said.
we're blowing the noise.
The noise gets lost in the signal.
Yeah,
or the noise-
it drowns out the
the
signal.
noise tries the noise drowns out the signal is such a good way to put it, because what's the signaling? The signaling is that companies are going up, companies are going down. It's a difficult environment to raise and deliver and serve people, but also it says a little bit of something about who the founders are.
Yeah.
There was a very big in my time, when we were raising money in our 30s, there was a very big inclination towards white founders getting a lot of money. Now, there was a big reason why they got it, because they came with the networks from abroad.
Yeah.
And then Africa started showing its own strength and capability, so money started also flowing to black founders. The representation is still not great, but what you're seeing is both black and white founders can fail. So
Yeah.
there's a level playing field type situation. Color has nothing to do with it. Experience does have something to do with it. So there's a higher chance that if you're a foreigner, you've probably studied in a good school, you understand these things better than local founders. But if you're local, you understand the market better. You know how to sell. You know how to, you know how to
people
You know the
better.
people. You know how to relate. You know how to build relationships. So there's values in both of them, and there's almost a leveling off of it. But to your point about failure, I think the finishing part that I haven't seen that is quite disappointing is, fine, failure is great. People being able to, of course, unless it's you, which is bad, but failure is good in that there's a lot of lessons that can be learned from it if people deliver the lessons. I want podcasts for failure.
That's true.
Actually,
do
you
you
know
know
what?
what
I was
to be
going to
honest,
say.
maybe like Failure
if
Fridays.
you're a
That
founder
That would be
and
like
you're
the
Failure
best.
Fridays.
That would actually be the
That
best.
would be
was-
fantastic.
that
I would
was
go
one
for
of-
every
I
single
literally
show.
listen to
Every single
episode.
show.
It's one of the episodes that I did maybe one or two, who knows, that I wanted to feature in this coming season of My Tech Story. So if you're a founder who's listening and you're willing to share about your experience
about
with
it.
failure, which we've made clear is something you should talk about, so that people can rebuild that trust
Right,
and
yeah,
understand
right.
where
It makes the
downfall
ecosystem
was.
better.
It does.
help.
Because it
Helps people
also
learn.
makes, honestly speaking, one of the things I want to do when I get to my 50s is turn my whatever business I'll have made into a fund of sorts. Like even if it's 10 million, 5 million, whatever I can be able to afford, $1 million, whatever I'm able to put together. I would love to be able to put that behind founders. My prerequisite is you have failed at least once. There's a humility that failure gives you and a clarity of purpose. There's a superhumanness you lose, and you realize I cannot do this thing by myself. I cannot do this thing without others. And I don't know everything. If you don't have that attitude, you're not getting any of my money. Because I have come to some of the hardest, let me think, the hardest things I've ever done is falls in a real, okay, so So the biggest thing for humans is relationships, social relationships, whichever, whether it's your parents, your kids, your partner, whatever. Relationships are relationships are really big. You really know the value of a relationship when it's strained, not when it's good.
Yeah.
You really know. Because a friend of mine asked me this question and I found it so amazing. He said, what is stronger, a steel rod or a steel cable? Steel rod. It's rigid, it's strong. You hit it against things, you can knock a guy out, you can put it between a truck and another truck and it can pull each other. He said, no, it's a steel cable. Because cables do well under tension. It can stretch. When it's super hot, it can relax.
Yeah.
When it's freezing, that's why they don't use steel rods for power or aluminium rods for power. They use aluminium cables. Yeah. They flex. The power of anything, and it is in its ability to be agile and flex. Relationships are the same way. Can your relationship with yourself be agile and flex when you make mistakes, or will you beat yourself to the ground when you do something stupid? Will your relationship with your partner, with your friend, with your co-founder, with your God, with your parents, with your kids, can it flex as your life changes? As your parents get older and they cannot sustain themselves, as your co-founder starts getting burnout, as your staff start getting tired of not seeing salaries every month, can you flex those relationships and build them up? There is where you see strong founders.
And by the way, those are the boring stories. That's the signal. Those are the things that are never sung.
No.
It literally goes unsung. Because it's done every day with the companies that are like 20 years old. Doing this, waking up every day, delivering the same value.
You don't see it, but there's power in doing something every single day. We can talk about this all day, but we need to move to
amazing stuff.
The next conversation, which is OpenAI versus OpenAI's ChatGPT 4.0 versus Gemini 1.5
There's no
Pro.
verses.
Now, I'm just going to read.
There's no
verses. Here we are. I'm just going to read something small that we wrote in our newsletter that came out for the May Roundup. Now, we are witnessing yet another supremacy battle. You're arguing different in the large language model domain. Now, during the Spring Update event, Sam Altman announced an upgrade to the ChatGPT 4 model to the new GPT 4.0 model, also known as Omni. Hours before Google held its annual I/O developer conference event with major announcements that include unveiling of Gemini 1.5 and Pro. Now, with that said, first of all, why were they so close to each other? Do you think people do this all the time?
I don't know.
This was
No, that's a bola move. That's like marketing jujitsu.
Yeah.
Like I do that any day.
Ninja. By the time,
That's ninja move,
you've already
brother.
flooded the market with your new vibe.
It's amazing to
By the
watch.
time Gemini is coming up, all the press releases have been done. Look, I am just gonna be straight.
And the demos were
Straight
really good.
Yeah. Let's just be straight.
Hey, by the time I was coming out, you're like, wow, oh my word, 1.4 what now?
ChatGPT, OpenAI is a Kenyan marathon runner. Everyone else is a scam. Right?
Yeah.
Llama is doing. I think Llama is doing a much better job
Yeah.
than Gemini actually. I think
Llama 3?
Yeah, I think
Llama
Meta
3?
is doing. Yeah.
Have you
Llama 3 is
interacted
good.
with it yet,
I
or
have,
just
and
from-
in fact, not only have they done a really good job, they're simplifying it to the point where you can run it off a phone. The whole thing off a phone.
Wow.
So Llama is if we were going to talk about ChatGPT versus,
Models.
it would be
If we're gonna do
Llama,
that.
not Gemini. I think first things first. 4.0 Omni. They have kept their attitude of game changing so consistently that now on my iPad, which I left in the car actually, sadly, I can open ChatGPT, the iOS app, on the side. I can allow it to screen share. I can put something on the other side and be like, what is this I'm looking at? Oh, this is a Van Gogh. It's a painting from so-and-so. It's seeing my screen and telling me what I'm looking at. I have seen therapists have ChatGPT in their room, listening to conversations with patients, and then at the end, analyzing these conversations to give the therapist more insight that the therapist may not have had. Yes, 2, 3, 4 days ago, eye specialists in different countries in the US competed against ChatGPT 4 on eye tests. ChatGPT 4 is better than ophthalmologists in training. It was better than ophthalmologists with less than 5 years of training. It was just a little bit worse than ophthalmologists with more than 15 years of training. Think about that, because eyes are things you have to see and test and analyze. So if you're at a point where between November 2022 and May 2024, we are looking at Omni, what does 2030 look like?
It looks like an
Interesting. I
episode
have a
of
bunch
Black
of
Mirror.
hot
That's what it
takes
looks like.
Yeah. Well, yes.
Tell
Let me
us.
start by saying, just on a model level, ChatGPT 4 Omni is really, really amazing.
It's good.
I think there's a paper being published by Stanford that analyzes a lot of all these large language models.
Yeah.
The actual first model, I think, that scores higher than GPT-4o is Cloudy 3, which is really built by Anthropic AI, the group of researchers and policymakers and stuff. It scores better than GPT-4o across many benchmarks on things like US, math, history, science, like so many. But it's a very, very small basis point. But you see, what I think OpenAI really scored with 4o, in my view, is first of all, they're taking themselves out of the rat race of having to do, we were all expecting 5. And then 6, and then 7. Like, the usual rat race.
Yeah.
What's the next iPhone 17?
exactly.
The next, because what they've done that's really different with GPT-4, or the foundational model is the same, but they're kind of making it multimodal. Now it's beginning to take in audio,
Yes.
visual, like as he explained, like he can be able to like put on the app, and it passes like the visual content and explains what's happening. The only thing that I think it doesn't have yet is video out, and that's because of Sora and what they're doing, the work they're doing in Sora, and that's amazing as well to follow. But as an enthusiast in the space, these guys have really scored highly because of one, beginning to obfuscate like the models. It's not now a rat race of dropping another $10-15 million to build the next model, but now bringing in like models that are really good with vision and passing it all into one Omni experience.
Yes.
And that's the biggest thing. But you know what's even better? At least from the demos, I've gotten a chance to like play with like the ChatGPT Plus and play around at least with Cloudy.
Yeah.
It's the latency. Like it makes it so realistic.
Oh
like
my
the way
gosh.
you can. It's like have you ever called Siri and manzi you're just like, hey Siri,
What is this one doing, man?
Takes
like
time,
5
like,
plus 5.
ding.
What is it? And it's like
Here's what I found on the internet.
5
Yay!
plus 5.
That's up.
And if you listen to even the demos and you even follow the demos, like the latency makes it so conversational.
Yeah.
Like so realistic.
Yeah.
And that is an absolute game changer.
Sorry, before can I just slightly, Nini, I was still on the podcast. They were talking about who was this person who they used their voice as of a celebrity.
Oh, Scarlett Johansson.
Scarlett Johansson.
Or the whole issue
and then
around
they've
that.
been trying to backtrack that information because the realism is there. But then
I mean, again, this is now the part where I really like to separate the drama from the actual
the
fun
actual-
stuff.
From the science.
But from the science.
Okay, that's
But
drama,
hey,
that's
the
drama.
drama is for them to resolve.
Yeah.
But the science
do
is still
you-
solid.
I mean, they said they
That's
have
real.
rectified her voice,
mean,
but it was generally her
yeah.
voice just altered.
I mean, we all know what it is. Like, let's not say it, but we know what it is.
You know
like,
what it is.
they asked her literally a day
Yeah.
before that. But you know what? A kettle can be purple. Apparently, not necessarily black. But hey, that's just for anyone's guess.
Anyway, that was a side note. Yeah. Proceed with your theory.
So I was talking about the latency making it like extremely, extremely super fast and extremely really good. But I think the biggest thing that I'm now really excited about when it comes to what he said, imagine 2030, imagine where these models are going to end up in.
I was going to ask
I
you.
really think about the biggest opportunity in my view for a lot of these LLMs. And I think eventually they'll end up in the open source market. Like the right now it's like $15 per million tokens or something. And I'm not sure about the numbers. You can fact check me there or something to right now to run GPT-4o for your product.
Yeah.
And with what NVIDIA is doing, I actually don't want to tie in back NVIDIA, but I feel like the chickens will roost with NVIDIA at some inflection point where now the cost for compute is really, really low. And now it's really the guys who are building the models on top of that tech that are now going to be minting the value. And then eventually the tech is going to be so accessible that now the developers and the builders in the space can actually begin to leverage these models as part of their product delivery for practically cheap. Just like how previously it used to be so expensive to run like
Internet, just internet.
on-prem, like you have to set up you have to set up your cloud like you know what right now it's, I mean
so far
no
up.
I'm in my 20s.
Nah,
You
can
can tell me. For me, I don't know that reality. I don't know reality. I'm like, why?
Space.
Why would you do things?
I remember a song.
But
There's
anyway.
a song by Justin Timberlake called Love Stoned, and it came out in the 90s. And I was trying to get it on YouTube, and then I wanted to watch it. I wanted to show it to my. I don't know why I wanted to watch it, but I wanted to get the long version. So Love Stoned has its 4-minute radio short, and then there's an extension. That time he was working with Timberlake. It was with Timberland, fantastic beat. I remember using dial-up to download a 14 MB song.
14.
I did it at 7 p.m. Went to sleep. Woke up.
And
Song was
it's
7 minutes long. Woke up. It had just done 5 minutes 12 seconds. That 5:12, I was like, we are in the ghetto, bro. But I was so excited because I was like, I can now take this video, I can cut it, I can put it on a disc, burn it, send it to people. What I'm saying is, the reality is, between the time I could walk at around 10 years old and now, I have moved from black and white TVs to a TV screen that's clear, that I can see right through. And when I put it on, I can see the screen and I would not even be able to see right through it.
Have you seen
To
Apple
phones
VR?
that fold, TV screens that fold, right? Let's not talk about VR yet. But then it's the TV that I'm looking at, right? I am not going to wear VR headset to watch TV.
You're not going to use
But
VR headsets.
I will definitely, and I can see this coming, I will definitely have, what are the things you put in your eyes again? Contact lenses that put the TV screen in my eye. So that's, I'm not in a hurry.
Really
So
cool.
when you ask me what is the power of AI, coming from an edtech space, every Monday morning, about a third of the country sits down in a classroom. That's wild. Kenya's pyramid is this way. And for everyone who's not watching, it's like a pyramid where the oldest people are the smallest in percentage and the largest percentage are children. And what is the problem with these 50 million kids who go to class? Well, there are 500,000 teachers. How are you going to educate those people? You can't. Have you watched Netflix's new movie with Jennifer Lopez called Atlas?
Well,
I have not.
You should. It just came out a couple of days ago. So it's about her and a personal AI. They get into a different planet. The personal AI keeps insisting on her syncing with that AI, and she refuses because she's afraid of what AI is going to do to her brain. So it's a real sync. If you were to ask me what the future of AI is, that's it. A neural link where every child born gets an ID and a personal AI. That's the future.
Let me ask. Okay, so I wanna ask you. I just wanna ask a follow up. Where in the time frame are you placing that? Is that like in the near term or in the long term?
It
Like
depends.
where you really
So
at
let me
with that
answer
prediction?
slightly about that. The Neuralinks, Elon Musk actually did they
XAI
put
is
a
here,
chip,
right?
Yeah.
into someone's brain to, I think they were having issues with movement or something, and then that kind of helped them to link things. And then during the research, they discovered that, of course, your brain moves a lot during time frame, and of course, that maybe messed up with some of the links that they had put in. But now that was already evidence that this is something that is practical and is already in the works.
That's
They're
actually
really
very
in
interesting.
production.
So
The
for
reason
you,
why
it's
about-
really near
let
term.
me-
You're
the
bringing
reason
like
why I
really
started by
near
giving
term.
you the example of TV is I'm still here watching television basically every day. When I started, it was a knob.
Yeah.
And the knob put on a black and white screen
Yeah.
that was in a cathode tube
Yeah.
that needed power. And when you put off the knob, the signal went into a little white light. That was the coolest TV available at the time. I remember kids used to come to my house to watch the TV that my dad had bought, which was the coolest. Now we have, bendable screens. Like it's real-time TV, right? Like my television screen, I can talk to it. It talks back to me. Smart TVs, like it's wild what we have today.
Yeah.
But the part that a lot of people don't understand is it's happened in a lifetime. And in every 18 months, technology doubles or triples and sometimes even quadruples in speed. So from the 70s and 80s when I started watching TV, to now, if you look at technology's logarithmic increase in terms of intellect, we're talking quantum computing in the next decade or two, maybe even 3. By the time I'm looking at you in my 70s, white hair, still looking 30-some, we'll be looking at each other from different parts of the world, feeling like we're in the same room. So I don't think Mark Zuckerberg is crazy putting $1 billion behind Meta and the virtual reality. I don't think he's insane. I think he's a bit too early.
Yeah.
But I can definitely tell you AI has accelerated the compute for that
100%.
technology exponentially. So when GPUs are coming out for especially that kind of lifestyle, we've already primed it. So I think that my kids have a 13-year-old and 11-year-old. By the time they're graduating college, which is in roughly a decade, some version of a neural link will exist. Maybe not like a fixture or like an operated on situation. Probably not that, but some version of it will have existed. The same way I have a watch here that tells me it's time for you to take a break, or get out, you're stressed, whatever. There will be something, and that thing will be personal, and that thing will be theirs for life.
Who do you think is going to be the biggest winner on a business perspective?
And after you answer that question, to wrap up the conversation, I just want us to bring it back to an African context. What do you think could be the potential social and economic impact of AI's development as we go towards that direction?
And this is actually
let's start with that.
So I had a conversation on October the 6th, 2020, last year. It was a very cool meet. There's this thing called the Annual General Challenges Conference. I forget the name. It's a Bill Gates thing. And we were 2,000 people, and they wanted to have 2 people have a conversation with Bill Gates in person. And I had the great fortune of having a 10-minute conversation with Bill Gates about education and AI.
Wow. And
it's on camera. I will give you the recording when it's given to me because they have timelines. And my question was about Africa and AI. And he gave me a response which was cool. And then I went and read up on it. So here are 2 things that we must assert ourselves to. Number 1, Africa's youth is the largest and will still be the largest, and the largest working force by 2030, going towards 2070. 2070 will be the largest community of people on earth. Cool. The second thing is we will be the strongest workforce. Not Europeans, not Americans, not Asians. It will be Africans. So the same boats that are going to Europe that are causing all this chaos and populism and trying to get people to come back, those boats will become ships, and those ships will be first class, and those people who are going there will be begged to come, because the pyramid in Europe is upside down. Japan's average age is above 50. So who's going to make the pension? Where are they going to get them? South Korea has the same problem. And even if you're going to try and ship people from China, Chinese are not interested anymore. They have their own space and they want to stay in that space. So with those 2 things in mind, who are the people you're trying to educate the fastest, the cheapest, and the most? The strongest. Why are you wasting time educating folks who are in their 30s? Educate folks in their early 20s. Let them come and be our nurses, our service providers, our garbage truck people. Then you get to realize a lot of these are labor markets, which means that a lot of the money goes to laborers. And if all your laborers are from Africa, how are you going to keep educating these people to make sure they stay comfortable? All of that means to me that the biggest beneficiary of artificial intelligence in terms of implementation will be Africans. But the biggest winners in general, I think, will be the same conglomerates who've always been winning. Big tech. But there will be a big win for African governments at that point, because a lot of money is going to come home.
I think that's a very, in my view, that I find that to be a very interesting macro perspective. I don't think I can even shed more light on that. When you ask me like how Africa is going to win, I think I have a way more specific perspective in the sense where I've been looking at the GitHub repos and the open source like traction that's happening. And I think, contrary to actually many people's beliefs, we've been waiting for programmers to lose jobs because, the AI has come. But it's almost like the complete opposite. It's such an exciting time to build like rapidly different products. Not just on the basis of efficiency, like how like a one-man team can literally take a product from. You remember the way we were talking about the significant friction that it was to just literally set up, servers to just deploy, to start building your product back in the 2000s. And right now you just deploy it in 5 minutes to AWS or, or to GCP. Right. The same thing is what I'm envisioning how building with all these tools. Like, look at Copilot. When you're writing code with Copilot, it's like God just looked down on you and gave you a kiss. It's amazing. Like, you're just shipping things much faster. Yeah. But that's just on an efficiency level. I'm also talking about on a fundamental product level. Like, products can look rapidly different because of, as I said, the cost of compute going down and the cost of these models going down. People will be using the best in class models to do this. I ultimately think the biggest winners will still be at least any of the big tech guys who aggregate a lot of, like a lot of traction and a lot of moat towards their model. At this point, it looks like OpenAI has the lead, but I still don't think it's 100% clear who's the big winner in that space. But the indie developers, the indie builders, the African guys who are now not needing to go to university to learn and can just get into YouTube and learn how to code, literally have within their reach,
right within
like
their reach.
Some of the most
the
amazing.
ability to become a 5x dev.
Can I say this to his point? Not only do they have the ability to have the 5x dev, and this is why I think ChatGPT did a phenomenal thing in creating a GPT store, is they have a place they can be able to deploy.
Exactly.
Yes.
All the products that can be built on top of this.
On top of that.
Yeah.
That's a massive opportunity. That's a massive opportunity for us here.
Right.
Like, oh my gosh, like there's so many things we could rebuild.
much.
But I get excited. I got excited about this when we were doing when the blockchain wave hit, and I'm still very excited about this, even with the AI wave, and I still see it like coming together at some point. So I'm excited about what Africans are gonna build and what we're gonna be empowered to
honestly.
It's gonna be amazing.
And I'm waiting to see that progress. And before we're about to wrap up this conversation, I don't think we'll be able to touch on the last topic. But the last question I have is with regards to regulation. AI.
We're not going to do that today. Let's do that next time. Nah, that's what we should have started with.
Touchy
Because
topic.
if you talk about regulation, the other thing we would have talked about is the Kenya Film Commission putting out the regulation on YouTube content
Exactly.
creators.
Okay,
Having
we
to
can
give, having to
those
give
two-
them their content.
the last.
Nah, just, you know what? Let me tell you something about that.
What did you say about free markets, Tonee? I see you and me. We're here already. We're here.
Yo.
This is a classic example of overreaching.
This is overreach.
When
You
a
know what I
government
mean?
is too
You
big.
can't
Why
hire.
is your government too big?
You can't create jobs for these young people. The young people go online and they build businesses on TikTok,
Come
YouTube,
on now.
Instagram, whatever. They create
Please.
content for themselves. They do their stuff. Then you come and say, "Give me your video."
Hey, before you post your video on
YouTube in Kenya, people upload easily over 2,000 hours a day. A day. 2,000 hours of content a day. You want to put that behind Mama Michael to come and look at it so she can approve your content so you can post it. And I look at that and I'm like, it's not nonsensical. It's idiosyncrasy. It's a wildness that tells you how there's such a gap between the people in power, perceived power, and the people trying to make their lives work.
Yeah.
Because what ends up happening is that disconnection aggravates the disenfranchisement that for every one person in government, there's more than 184,000 young people in the cities looking for jobs. And that disenfranchisement bubbles under. And how does it bubble under? It doesn't just bubble under in the way they vote. It bubbles under in the angst they have towards you. And that animosity is blowing over in ways that a lot of people don't understand. So, let me give you a very practical example. A not close friend of mine had an interaction with a police officer that was not fantastic. And he was very irritated by the cop. But he recognized that in that moment, the policeman had power. And he took his number and he M-Pesa'd him and had his phone number with him. And for months, he worked to hack his WhatsApp until he did and ruined the man's life completely. He called everyone, moved photos and videos around. The cop never knew what hit him. I know this story because a friend of his was telling me about the damage that what this guy did to that cop, because the cop ended up throwing himself into a river. And so, and it's a story from like 17 years ago. It's a very long time story, or 7 years ago. It was a while. And the thing that a lot of people don't get to appreciate is just the level of despair they are introducing to young people's lives and the measures these young people, who are very much unhinged, are willing to take to push you out of whatever it is you're in. And it's a word of caution, both for government officials and government personalities, but also for people in the content creation space and people like us who put stuff on YouTube freely, that there needs to be conversation, not conflict. Yeah. This needs to be collaborative. If there's a point that the Kenya Film Commission wants to deliver, sit down with a group of content creators who are influential and say, this is what we're trying to do. There will be fringe actors, people who create nudity and all of that. This is just what's going to happen. The internet does that. Can we find a way to create something that allows us to have a relationship that ostracizes that community? Because the reason why that content is being created is because the demand is so high. 78% of the people, I learned this, 78% of the people who got into the internet in the 90s got into the internet because of porn. 78%.
Interesting.
Got onto the internet because of porn in the 90s. And the industry became so big that if you look at the overall income that has come into into the internet, pornography and those kind of things, they have a sizable chunk, which is why OnlyFans is what OnlyFans is doing. And there are so many other companies like that in the world. Yeah. There is demand. If you can't kill supply if you can't manage demand. Yeah. So if that's what they're trying to manage at the Kenyan Film Commission, then let's talk about that. Yeah. Don't come and blanket blow up everyone. And emails 8 a.m. It doesn't make any form of cognitive sense to do that. Call people, have a thought-focused group, and then let the community itself create the steps that they can hold themselves accountable to.
Let's also define what a film is.
I think that's, first of all, I think that's well put. I would not put myself as any expert in the content creation space, but I think this is what I'd have to say. I think we're no strangers to government overreaching, and I think there could be some policy people watching or some aspiring policy making people as well in the audience. I think one lost art in that whole space, in my opinion, is like to be conservative. Like sometimes not doing something is the right thing for that particular point in time. Because when something is too nascent for you to start stifling out with when something is too young. When something is too young for you to start crippling it down with a lot of regulation, you literally you're not only killing and when you layer that with the heavy taxation and it's a whole microcosm of things going wrong and things going south. So we genuinely need rational folks who can stand in between the people and literally stand for policies that push for not doing stuff that's overreaching for the sake of these economies. And we've seen that a lot in most of it's actually layered all across. When you look at the finance bill that's happening right now, when you look at what the Kenya Film Commission has done. Yes. I mean, you just need to apply for one license in this country and then you will realize. Nice, man. You will realize. Okay. And then what does this have to do?
And then on the other side of that, and on the other side of that is pay more and more and more taxes.
Imagine how it's now that's a cognitive dissonance. How do you want me to operate? You see, it even...
Cognitive dissonance for you guys, by the way, is when you have one thought and another thought and they're conflicting.
Yeah, it's like you're holding an oxymoron in your head.
Do you know, we have to go, man.
Yeah,
we have to go.
Yeah.
No, but
anyway,
conversation has been
I mean, good. Regulation, that's always it's a running gag.
You really just put the TNT out in the afternoon. Here, blow yourselves up.
To be honest, I mean, we love government, but
we don't.
Please.
There's a lot of issues when it comes to regulation and policy, especially when it comes to advancement. Even in startups, I think there's a lot of insane things happening in that front. Right. But we do not have the time today.
We can get into policy today.
But I will definitely be welcoming.
Put a lead on that, again. And we can get some feedback in as well.
I'll just get the feedback from the audience if they want to again. I personally really have enjoyed this conversation, man.
This is fun.
Just a reminder once again that these are the kind of conversations that you can also have at our MTS newsletter that rolls out every week and every month. And so make sure that you check that out at mtsafrica.co/join, or you can check in the description wherever you're listening from. Right. I have been your moderator for today, Alice Kanjejo.
She tried to moderate.
I tried.
It was a struggle, though.
Guys, I was part of
this is the experiment. This is the experiment, guys.
This is the pilot.
It's only going to get better.
I promise it gets better than this.
We promise.
Thanks, guys. This has been awesome.
It was nice. It was very, very nice. Thanks for having us. Tonee Ndungu here. Cheers. Enjoy.
Yeah. Dominic, you want to sign off?
No, thank you. Thank you for having me.
That's dumb, guys. Cheers. See you.
We'll see you the next one.